written about this severally, I used to have really big problems with white men. Really big. You know, I really just was like, you know, white dudes, they're not my people. I don't like them very much. I used to have that issue because I used to get upset. You know, I used to get upset. I used to be like, they're privileged and all sorts of stories, and they're racist. They're all, and by the way, you know, there are very few racists in the world. I keep telling people this. If you want to believe that everybody's a racist, then you're going to see racists everywhere. There are very few racists in the world. You have people who are ignorant and biased, but that's very different from racism, right? But anyway, and I used to always have negative experiences with them. Until one day, and I never forget this, I've actually got it in my diary. In 2011, I woke up one of the nights after I'd had a meditation and I went to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night and I said, but Rachel, you can't change a white person because you don't have that kind of power. Yeah. However, every time you go into a room with white people, there's an attitude that you have. There's a way of being that you are. There's power that you give away.
Energy that you
give away. There's energy that you create in that room. How about you stop doing that? Let's just do that as an exercise. How about you stop expecting white people to be racist? How about you stop expecting a conversation with a white person to be difficult? How about you stop giving away power? Because I would literally start to speak like a mouse in their presence. I didn't speak the same way I spoke like I'm talking now. Like right now, I'm in my full power. But when I was around my people, I'd become meek as a mouse, and I'm trying to fix my accent. You know, I'm trying to sound as British as possible because, you know, a British accent gets you into places. You're like, oh, she speaks so well. and I was doing all of those things instead of just being authentically myself.
Exactly.
And being with the person in front of me. I kid you not, Rodney, and I always now I stand in rooms speaking to only white men. Speaking, me, I am they invited me to come and speak to them about whatever it is I'm talking about. It wasn't because I changed them, it's because I changed myself.
Yes.
That's the power. That's the only power we have.
Yes.
So my invitation is to say, yes, you can be very upset that people are treating you in a specific way. And there's probably a level of truth to that. But your power is working on yourself, is entering the room with permission to be there. Right? So when the meditation, I do that. I say, you know, for 2 minutes, stand in your height. Remember, I have permission to be grounded here. And I have permission to connect to my highest purpose. Stand wide. I have permission to take up space. I have permission to be in relationship with people. Think about your back and your front. Who are you connected with in your history? Who are the ancestors you're walking into the room with? That's a lot of power, right? And also, but also what is my vision for my life? And you know, this is a meditation that I got from Richard Strozzi Heckler, who you can look up. He's got these powerful meditation tools. But this is a remembrance. Then you walk into a room, and when you remember that, you stop being small. And when you stop being small, people go, "Wait, what happened to Rachel? Have you noticed Rachel? Rachel has a different energy. Rachel is not taking any nonsense anymore." Exactly. And that's how we change the world. That's how we change the world.
Good, good. And actually, you actually touched on something that I wanted to actually bring up in closing. The George Floyd situation. What's your take on the entire situation?
You left that conversation for the end, Rodney.
For the last one, yeah, I know it's really difficult, and I just thought I'll put it in there.
Listen, so I have 3 thoughts. I'll summarize them. The first thought is very simple. George Floyd was murdered.
Yes.
And watching that video was one of the most upsetting things that one could ever watch. I mean, it was upsetting for us. Imagine how his family feels.
Yes.
And I keep saying to people, you know, this comes quite close to home for me because people struggle to believe this sometimes. I have a friend who was shot in Zimbabwe. shot dead by police in Zimbabwe when I was 17 years old. One of my best friends. He was shot by the police between Gweru and Shangani. They had some altercation. It was race related. He was colored, they were black. And you know, those dynamics are also often very interesting. They shot him and he died. And so for me, these moments always remind me, he was really one of my best friends. And I mean, I don't think there's a year that ever passes in February when I don't think of his death. It was devastating. And so the pain that you feel when somebody's taken in that way is overwhelming. And he wasn't even my family. I can imagine what that meant for his family, right? But secondly, my second thought is this. What we need to explore in this moment is the self-hate that drives people to do these kinds of things. Because here's the thing about superiority complex, and this is how we give away power. Yeah. We assume that people who are racist and superior in their attitudes actually have a lot of confidence. They don't. They're some of the most insecure people masquerading as having power.
I agree with you, yes.
But they hate themselves. They have a self-hate inside of them, which is what leads them to do the kinds of things that they do. Yes. And so for me, I feel like we make a mistake sometimes when we treat them as though they have all of this power. Actually, the wound is different. We are healing the wrong wound here.
Yes.
And I keep saying when you don't respect life force in yourself because you self-hate, you're not going to respect life force in another person.
That is true.
And that's why people can kill, because they have no relationship with themselves, because there's a brokenness inside there that makes them dictators, you know, that makes them bullies, that makes them killers. It's not confidence. It's not confidence, guys. Let's get that correct. So let's not heal the wrong wound. But the third thing I want to say is that I believe that this moment is calling us. And I watched a video this morning that was so powerful for me. Where I don't know if you saw it. It was an African-American, it was 3 African-American males. One was 40, one was 40 something. Did you see that?
I saw that. That was a very powerful statement.
That,
very powerful.
for me, was a powerful statement.
Yes.
Because for those who haven't watched, it's an older African-American male. We can't see what happened before that, but my sense is that they were rioting and doing whatever it is. And then there's a 30-something-year-old guy who says, guys, there has to be a better way, because you're 40-something or 50-something, I can't remember. I'm 36. This kid is 16 years old, and we're all rioting. There's something wrong with the situation. Because for how many more generations will we be doing this? They must be a better way.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so for me, I feel like this moment is calling us to ask ourselves, what is the better way?
Yes.
Because I can't be toy-toying like my grandparents were toy-toying, because then it means we're not getting anywhere. Exactly. Nothing is changing. And so I imagine, and I encourage us all to think about this. Where does the change need to start?
Yes.
If anecdotally you use that story that I told about my relationship with white males, if we all were doing that, if we all were fixing to change ourselves and the way we interact and the energy we create in the world and the dynamics with which we interact, we may be able to reduce some of these incidences.
Yes.
We may be able to change the quality of the experience. I was on a call with somebody this morning, and she said to me, and she was talking about the fact that, you know, she struggled with relationships with white people, and that she won't bring them into conversation in the same way that she brings other people into conversation. And I said to her, so how are you different? How are you different from them?
Yes, you're just the same.
That's prejudice.
Yes.
That's bias. Yes, we're all doing it. And then some of us feel justified because we say, oh, but then I was a victim and so I'm reacting. Well, but the point is you're recreating the same energy. Whether you call it reacting, whether you call it I was a victim, The point is you have power to shift that. You have power to bring people in, just like they have power to bring that. I say the same thing to white people, by the way. Oh, but I'm uncomfortable having conversations with black people. So then you're biased.
Yes.
So then you have a racial problem. If you don't have any black friends, I'm worried about you. But similar to all of us here, if you don't have any white friends, I'm worried about you. Same thing. Because it's a dynamic in the world. And if we don't, and that's why there was also a powerful video by Now This, the one where that black guy says, I do yoga, you know, this is my brother. I don't know if you saw it. This is my brother. I do yoga. I'm a vegetarian. I can't remember the things he said.
I saw it, yes.
But I'm also a black man.
I saw it, yes. I saw it. He had dreadlocks, isn't he? He had dreadlocks. Yes,
exactly. Yes. So let me say something simple, very simple. I imagine that part of the problems with these shootings is that these white policemen don't have any black friends. Very simple. So for them, that's not a human being. But I also imagine that many of us as black people don't have any white friends. And so when I'm when I'm in a conversation with a white policeman, I'm also seeing a non-human. So there's an energy dynamic that's taking place. If we don't own that energy dynamic, if white people don't start humanizing black people, and if black people don't start humanizing white people, if Indian people don't start humanizing white people and black people, if we don't start humanizing Asian people, if we don't, all of that, if we don't humanize each other, these experiences don't stop. For me, that's the better way.
Yes.
For me, that's the better way. When I do diversity workshops, I say, who is in your circle of trust? And then you start to notice they all look the same. They're all black. They're all a particular demographic.
Yeah.
And that's how the world stays the same. So I always say in my diversity workshops, go out into the world and make friends with 3 people who are not like you.
Yes.
3 people you resent, whether you resent their sexuality, you resent their race, you resent their gender, whatever it is, go and make friends with 3 of those people and tell me if in 6 months' time, your perspective about life hasn't changed.
Yes, yes. That's very powerful, Rachel. That's very, very powerful. And I think it's something we need to do more of, like you're saying. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It happens to some extent, but not quite to the extent where we can eradicate this thing. But I guess if we all start from ourselves, changing ourselves, and everyone does that, I think in the end we can get there, hopefully.
It's a choice. It's a choice, Rodney. I did a diversity program for an organization that said they could never hire a certain demographic. By the time I left, we had increased that demographic 4-fold. And it was choice making. One of the things I said when I designed this program, I said, Black people cannot be mentored by other Black people. White people cannot be mentored by other white people. So go and find a mentor who is different from you. If you're Black, go and find the whitest Germanist partner you can find. If you're white, go and find the blackest Ghanaianist partner you can find, right? Go find somebody who's fundamentally different from you. And here's the thing, we don't do mentoring just by sitting at a table and talking to each other. When you're driving to a client site, drive together. Those 3 hours, drive together. What do I call that? Forced exposures. Yes. Because in forced exposures, because it's always going to be awkward. It's always going to be awkward. If you're used to talking about, I don't know, what we do over our braais over the weekends, whereas this person wants to talk about the last mountain that they climbed, and I'm being very stereotypical on purpose, because I used to hate conversations with white people about mountain climbing. I was like, why are we talking about mountains? This is irritating. But now I understand why people of certain backgrounds enjoy those kinds of things. It makes me empathetic, and it makes me see that there's purpose to what people do in this life. If I didn't force the exposure, it would have never happened. So it's always going to be uncomfortable. It's always going to be awkward. But if we're lazy, nothing changes. Our organizations don't change. Our countries don't change. Our world doesn't change. So it's an individual thing before it becomes a collective thing. And by the way, these camera, I don't know